Well, welcome everybody to the Green Dialogue. And today we are joined by Rob Kaercher. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correct, Rob.
It's Kaercher, but it's okay. It's
Kaercher.
pretty close. I've heard worse.
I learned one thing already today. Thank you.
There you go.
Rob has been a huge supporter of renewable energy in the township and around mid-Michigan. He helps install one of the first larger solar systems that we did here at the township, and has grown a business and a herd of talented people who are helping install systems throughout mid-Michigan. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story, Rob, and um, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the invite, Leroy, and it's great to be here. And also, can't say enough about everything you've done for sustainability in the township and community as well. So I definitely have taken inspiration from you as well along the way, and I've really valued the work we've been able to do together. But yeah, so it's great to be here. And like Leroy said, my name is Rob Kaercher. I'm a Michigan State graduate, studied environmental science, focus on sustainability. And then went to Michigan State College of Law to pursue environmental law purely for that reason of climate change, which is completely my driving force and passion in my career. And then we made the decision where I met my co-founder running the Environmental Law Society that we felt we could make a bigger impact in quicker impact, which is of necessity to actually enter more of the private sector to try to take carbon off the grid in real time, the best we could as fast as we could. And that's been our primary goal ever since. And but along with that, there's a lot more than that goes along with sustainability other than renewable energy. And that's kind of a big part of what I wanted to share today. Is what I believe is arguably the most important aspect of sustainability in fighting climate change, which is to educate the public and also educate the next generation about how you can make sustainable choices, just the basic facts about climate change, and arm people with the information they need in order to make those responsible choices for themselves. And it's those little things that count, So I guess I kind of just jump into it. Some sort of ideas that I've kicked around, and would love to find a way to possibly integrate, into the township and local community as far as providing information, where people can actually make, more sustainable choices. So, that I think is again the most important thing, because we can install solar, other companies can install solar, but if we as a community and as the general public don't make more active, sustainable choices in our daily lives, that's going to make a much more high hurdle for us to climb here. And there are a shocking amount of little things you can do in your day-to-day life, whether it's the choices you make as a consumer, and other small things that make a huge impact over time. And I think people would be shocked at how much they themselves can do by, making slight adjustments as a consumer, or maybe in like the food choices that we make, and what impact that has on carbon and water consumption generally. And so I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here as far as sustainability and fighting climate change. So I think like creating some sort of an avenue or an outreach aspect, whether it's through events, newsletters, that can give people just some simple facts about choices they can make. And there's some easy examples, out there that I think people would be surprised of that these choices exist. Even in Meyer today, you can make those choices. Just for example, it's not the most glamorous of examples, but it's impactful. There is one brand of trash bags you can buy at Meijer today. There's a whole row of them, but there is one in particular that is fully recycled, fully decomposable material, which that's just one option, and it doesn't affect your daily life. It's the exact same product essentially for all intents and purposes, but makes a big impact long term if we all make those types of decisions. And, as a consumer, we dictate the market. So if we can help get people the knowledge to make those choices, then there will be a larger market that will come to meet that demand. And half of that battle is simply letting people know these choices exist. Because I think there are tons of good people that, care about this. They just need to know how to approach it. Leroy?
I just wanted to make this because you brought up plastic bags. Kendra on our call here has been working with decomposable plastics,
Oh, cool.
and she might have a word to say about that as well. Um, but I just wanted to share that, and I know you'll get into dialogue in a little bit, but hold that placemaker.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that, I love hearing that. See, and there are so many more, and that's one thing I've learned through my time kind of, pursuing sustainability and climate change, as a career, is that there are so many more people who care and that are taking active steps than I think we all realize, which is very inspiring. And that's what makes me that much more confident that if we do provide better resources of information for the general public, that way more people would be interested and want to step up and make those decisions than we realize. But half of the battle is just that they don't know. It's not something that's openly discussed about, this choice versus this, and so if there's avenues to that, I think, again, it could make a big difference. And so that was just one example, as far as the fully recycle and decomposable bags. Um, and then also, I think, there are some other pretty big decisions people can make specifically around how they decide to, what food choices, for instance, they make, as far as the carbon impact and water consumption that certain food choices may have, where you don't necessarily have to adjust. It's not like you need to necessarily, while I do respect it, become fully vegan, that you don't necessarily need to take it to that point to still make a huge impact on your own carbon footprint and the water consumption that your food requires. And there's a really cool tool out there that I've shown a lot of people, and that I think is as simple as providing like a link in an online newsletter or something like that. But the BBC, and it comes from a really awesome source, has a really cool tool that's a food calculator where you essentially can go in and put in, okay, what is the protein choice you make? How often do you consume that, and what quantity? The vegetable choices you make, how often, consuming what quantity, and then it will do the calculation for you, and then show you, okay, well then per year, this is the carbon impact of those choices, the water consumption of those choices, and then you can see how slight adjustments make a huge difference. And it's that kind of simple information, and there's tools and resources out there, and that's one example that would make a huge, huge impact. And I think a lot of people, again, would, take us up on that and utilize it, So that's another one where I think it's kind of pretty easy to maybe add a link in a newsletter or, something like that. And then the other piece of this, as far as educating the public, that I believe in is so important. And I'm a testament to this because, when I was 15 is when I saw Inconvenient Truth, and then that was it. My entire life changed, and then I knew what I didn't know exactly how, but I knew what I needed to do, which was to do everything I could to address climate change. And so I think there are ways to better, outreach into schools locally to help, educate the next generation. And an example of that, one of our solar consultants is also a biology teacher at DeWitt, and same thing as me, is very passionate about climate change. That's what we do with what we care about. And he actually leads a sustainability club that is actually student led. He's just the teacher representative, and they have passionate students that lead this club. And it's a model that I think could be taken into other local schools and say, hey, this is how our club works, and the students themselves can be the point of outreach, to other local students and help them set up those clubs. And that's a kind of that thing that we won't see the impact in the near term. But it's those students and that youth that are going to make the ultimate impact, in the future, and the choices they make in their careers. So I think like that's a really cool example of something that could easily be shared with the community at large. And then I have one kind of cool example is that I am going to be speaking tomorrow morning actually at Lansing Technical High School about renewable energy. So I'm very excited for that. As far as like, paths and careers in renewable energy. So super excited to share everything I can with interested students tomorrow. And then, one other kind of cool thing that we're doing as far as the outreach side, we're doing some solar projects for Lansing schools. And Fred, our biology teacher, who is part of our team, is leading outreach programs for all those schools where any interested student that wants to learn about what is renewable energy, how does it work, we're going to be leading like walkthroughs and showing the technology and doing demonstrations and little seminars to teach these students, and then they can actually see it in action, on their school. So super excited for that. And so, yeah, that was just some of the stuff I wanted to share. And those two pieces, I really believe that, overall education of the public and making a concerted effort to arm students locally with this information, because I'll tell you, they'll take it from there. And I'm kind of a testament to that. Because as I went into college, I think my first internship was Sierra Club. I helped lead the Beyond Coal program at MSU, and we ended up getting MSU to sign an agreement to increase their bio mass on Boiler 4, and it was a huge carbon reduction for the university. It took a lot of work, but it's amazing what students and the youth can do once they are given that knowledge and information. So that's really the majority of what I was hoping to sort of share with this group, and love to discuss and chat with everybody. And that's it. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Rob. I'm sure there's some comments or questions, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut for a few minutes.
Yeah, I have a question. I arrived to my destination, so like, don't worry. I'm like in the neighborhood. I pulled over. So I just completed the Next Cycle Michigan program. And so with a lot of people switching to solar, especially like for roof panels, what I've learned is that they don't have a solution to what to do with the old roofs that are still technically good and usable. So when you're applying solar, is there anything that you're able to do with like upcycled shingles or anything?
So that is a great question. I mean, now I will say typically, when we install, it doesn't require, and I guess if you do a roof integrated system, that would be different. But it doesn't require actually any removal of the existing, roofing structure or shingles. And once the system's installed, it can provide, weathering protection, wind protection for those same shingles, and extend the useful life. Now, as far as systems that might be roof integrated, or I know there are some of those solar shingles that are still kind of advancing, that would require then obviously a removal of all that material. And, that's not something we've been working with. So unfortunately, I can't speak to that. It's a great question. I will say there are certain panel manufacturers, and this is where we can actually make those, choices and help guide clients towards sustainable products that, but some panel manufacturers already have recycling programs and partnerships set up for their material, which is just kind of getting off the ground. And so we hope to see more and more of that. And so those are the types of products we try to recommend. But, you make a great point, because they're the back end material and or say roof material, there needs to be much more of an effort in that regard of where are we taking this material and how are we making sure it doesn't become waste. And so I'm very interested in, if you have anything, if anybody ever has any info about that, I would love to hear it and share it with clients.
Kinder, when I did my roof, I had a dumpster company that took it and recycled made it into, I don't know what they did with it exactly, but it was a dumpster company that specifically took the shingles and redid with the tar and whatever. So
You know the
that's
company,
helpful.
Sarah? I'd
Yeah.
love to share that with folks who are doing, any roof replacements.
Yeah, I think it was Daggett, but let me look.
Great.
Rob, one of the things that has struck me about you is you're just so passionate about what you do, and it kind of wears off on the people around you. And you've taken on a lot of what I would say volunteer or extracurricular activity that I think has been hopefully good for your business as well. But yeah, just you
Yeah,
set a
well,
good example
thank you,
just through your
Leroy.
passion.
I appreciate that. And it's I'm a product of the team as a whole, though, because we do have a lot of passionate people that care about this. Our core team are all doing this, not necessarily because it's, easy to try to grow a small business, but because we believe, in what we do. And I do think that really does resonate with people because, the more the further we advance in this industry and grow, the more I realize there are so many people who want to make, renewable energy choices because it's the right thing to do to reduce their carbon footprint. And it's inspiring. I met a lot of great people, local places of worship, schools, nonprofit organizations are doing a ton of great stuff. And, it makes me that much more interested in working hard and being successful so we can continue to provide, a service for someone who wants to try to actually make a concerted effort to reduce their footprint. And the most important thing I believe too is not only the entire reduce, reuse. We have to always remember that first. Use it efficiently, but we do ultimately need to source the power as close to where it is needed as possible. That is so important to reduce these 100-mile massive steel cables and concrete and everything it takes to service that, where instead the sun is still shining everywhere else. We need to obviously produce the power as close to the consumption as we can. So important. So but thank you, Roy. I appreciate you
Oh
saying
my
that.
gosh, thank you for the inspiration. And Sam?
Yeah, Rob, what you're talking about is really exciting to me, that you're reaching out to so many people about this important issue. And I'm just curious, I'm guessing you've run across people that are non-believers, and I don't know, maybe this is me in my location in Michigan, but I talk to these people every day, and they're great people, they're nice people. They just don't want to bother to learn about it. I mean, they just have it's ingrained in their head that this is a whole big farce. It's just something that the government's doing to take our money or whatever. They have a million excuses. And so I'm just curious how, if you do run across those folks, and what your strategy is. How do you deal with it?
No, that's a great point and a great question. And that's where one of the things I find most or I think is most important is that we, bridge this gap in energy production should not be politicized. Just like, when vehicles first became a thing, we didn't politicize. Oh, I'm with horse and buggy. I'm with vehicle. That's essentially what this is. It's very silly. Or I want telegraphs, not phones. It's so somehow through. And that's you can go down a rabbit hole with me on this, but through corporate interests, we've created a narrative around this that's just patently false. And we do run into that. There are a few strategies around that. Primarily, it's, while I love to talk about the carbon reduction and what that means for your system, if somebody is skeptical, one thing that crosses all bridges, and especially those folks, I think, is the fact that this is a good financial decision for you. So regardless of whether or not you believe in its merits or anything else, do you want to have more money in your bank or not long term? That, I mean, and nobody can say no to that. So that's been, kind of that primary tool. I mean, I don't like it, but that is the primary tool. And it's, I mean, yes, financial savings is great for everybody. But I will say in some regards, we are lucky, but also I do want to open the door to anyone and any beliefs, and I'm eager to talk to them about renewable energy and try to remove that stigma. I don't want to politicize it, but we do generally, most of our clients are very, environmentally conscious, and we do, a lot of referrals and things like that. One thing we're doing to try to bridge the gap is we do host these solarized programs that are, all in, basically inclusive for anybody to come and learn about this. And then they can sign up as a group and receive discounts. But one thing we're doing to specifically try to reach into the more rural communities that might have a stigma tied to this or a preconceived notion, is that we are actually partnering with a more of a conservative group, because they exist, conservative groups that are, it's more of the libertarian strain of like, my property, my power, those exist. And so we are working with one who is being the sort of the point group for this. So then it's not us coming to these communities, it's that group that speaks to them and kind of opens those doors. And we're hopefully going to be having an event, later this year and then next year, especially in some of the rural communities around Meridian and Lansing, where we'll be actually connecting like small farmers with REAP grants. And we have a consultant coming to explain how they can access these grants for agricultural, land. And then actually, utilizing the local farm registry, agency, their representative. So it's kind of like, finding a bridge with a group that does understand, but they do still stand in this other camp. And then you kind of communicating and working with them to sort of get your foot in the door and start these conversations. Whereas if it was me trying to say, call these areas and set up an event, I probably wouldn't be received nearly as well as a passionate climate change activist. So, but I'm optimistic. So we haven't had that event yet. But I am really optimistic because we've been kind of working for the last, 8 months, sort of talking through this and planning how we can bridge that gap. And I think that's a start, but what you're getting at is difficult. Misinformation is rampant, and it's I don't necessarily have a magic bullet for that, but I think we are addressing it, or at least trying to the best we can. And if anybody has suggestions, all ears on that too.
I think that idea of partnering with, if you can find somebody in those groups and partnering with them is a great idea.
We're thinking.
I'm feeling
open some doors.
Like nobody wants to listen to me either. You know what I mean? That with the fact that they know I've been involved with this for a long time, and they think I'm part of the bad guy group, and there's the biggest, when you mentioned economics, see, this is it's misinformation, but this is where they still are saying gas is the cheap energy, and if we have to go to electricity, then it's just going to get extremely expensive. They just have this idea in their head that it's going to get way too expensive to afford energy. And the other big argument, unfortunately, comes from religion, just their religious beliefs, and that we're going to be taken care of through that. So
I would point to the Pope's manifesto on climate change, is about 300 pages long, who makes it a moral responsibility for humans to take care of this planet. So if you need a guiding authority from a religious perspective, I mean, I don't think you can really look any higher than that. So, and I will say too, that Interfaith Power and Light is a fantastic organization in the state that tons of churches and places of worship are very passionate about this. And that's been one of the most exciting things that I've learned over the years, is that, in fact, a lot of these churches, you'd be maybe surprised at how many people are taking this as a moral responsibility to leave the world a better place than we found it. And so I know that's not always the case. But there are more than maybe you'd think. And it's easy to be skeptical and kind of get down with this. And that's partially why I didn't continue to pursue the science part of this, because if I ended up being a climate scientist, I could shout into the void all day and possibly see no return, which is why we went towards the private side, where we could be more proactive, and get out there. But I will say there is, we've advanced through this. I mean, honestly, Leroy, John Sarver, there's a lot of examples of people who have inspired me as well. And people are out there, and a lot of these churches, there's some really passionate folks there. They're just not the loudest ones, you know. And so Interfaith Power and Light, good example. Like if there is, you know, maybe a local church that's not so keen on this, maybe connecting them to Interfaith Power and Light. Like, hey, this is a huge group of churches just like you. Just hear what they have to say. You know, it's kind of finding that way for people to talk to somebody that they can recognize in themselves, and then
where
go
they can
from there.
relate, where they can relate.
Right. They can relate, and it's important to hear them. It's important not to immediately put down what they're saying. We have to open dialogue. You know, we have to bridge this gap. You know, it's so important, and try to find a way to slowly peel back the political aspect of renewable energy, because it's just, think of it as an improvement of technology that will ultimately, you know, improve our grid and save people money ultimately. I mean, so these are the facts, but how do we get people to even listen to those facts? And I think that's where we have to find people who, you know, they can see some similarities in themselves, like using Interfaith Power and Light, or, you know, Michigan League of Conservative Voters. I can't remember, the CEC is the name of that group, but they're out there. It's Conservative Energy Coalition, I believe is what that's called. So they exist, and you know, sometimes, like, if I think we can reach out to those groups and help connect other local people there and say, you don't need to talk to me, like, here, talk to them, you know. So I think that's our best approach, and it's not easy. And that's why I also started this conversation with focusing on, you know, educating the youth is one of the huge things. That's, I think, the biggest thing, honestly. So, yeah, but
Rob,
it's an uphill battle.
Hey, Rob, when you talk to students or actually anybody about, you know, career opportunities, jobs, what do you tell people, and what kind of guidance do you give them with respect to, let's say, you know, careers like in solar?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm still sort of finalizing my presentation for tomorrow at the high school. So, I mean, and we have people on our team that are good examples of this, where if you want a very hands-on ability to make a difference, I do recommend pursuing the electrical field. You know, becoming a extremely skilled electrician, you can take that skill and apply it to, you know, obviously solar, battery technology, you know, grid improvements, all sorts of things. That's the most, I think, direct path, you know, based on the choices you make of, you know, who you decide to work with in that direction, and the most, I think, feasible. Now, granted, it is a difficult trade, you know, there's no question, but there are other, you know, other aspects too. You know, there is going to be a growing and you know, field in just understanding, like, you know, the design aspect of solar, you know, electrical engineering for even higher education. You know, so there are career paths out there. I mean, education, teachers, we need good, passionate teachers. I mean, I can't stress that enough, because it's not going to happen in my generation. If we're going to solve this, it's going to be the next generations, you know. So that's another avenue as well. But primarily, if for the hands-on person that's like, I want to go home at night and know that, like, I did something today to take carbon off a grid, I mean, then I would recommend pursuing the electrical field. You know, the grid is going to become more and more electrified, and we have a huge demand for electricians. So it's also a steady and safe career path as far as career security. And you can make decisions to, say, join a company like ours, where I'm certain I'm not the only solar energy company that cares about sustainability in you know, in this country. I wish there were more of them, but they exist. You know, so that I think is probably the most practical approach. But there are other science-based approaches, and, you know, tech, and when it comes to system design, and even like consulting and things of that nature, when it comes to understanding grids and how they operate and load shedding and all these things, there are avenues for careers there as well. But I also can't say enough about, you know, the science teachers of the world, honestly. I mean, you know, like Fred from our team's a great example. You know, he has a whole climate change part of his lecture in his biology class, and I can't imagine how much that's affected his students in a way that, you know, it's going to ripple into their future lives. And I think that's so important. So Yeah. Probably my
So I
answer.
called Daggett 10 years ago when I did my roof. Daggett
Hmm.
told me that they recycled it. I called them and they said, no, we don't. So
Well,
I,
cross that one out. Okay.
yeah, sorry, I
Dude,
tried.
that's okay. No, thank you though. I mean, this is, it's not easy. That's the, when I was in my undergrad, I thought at this point we'd all be behind this and things would be getting way easier. And, maybe that's youth blind optimism. I don't know. But it is challenging, but it does exist. There are entities out there, and for companies like, recycling companies, or maybe the not Daggett, but others should hopefully see opportunity here if it's done correctly. Because I think that's one of the whole, and Sam, you spoke to this, that there's this conception that being environmentally sustainable is not economically efficient. And that's just not true. And so eventually I believe that, the money will start to speak for itself, because I can tell you right now, the technology is come so far, so fast, that it's undeniable, and it will be in the next 5 years. I can't imagine how fast this is going to go, to where it doesn't matter what your argument is. The technology, the money, and the facts are going to speak for themselves. And then there will be profit-driven entities that will respond to that accordingly. I believe that, but we have to help dictate the market, which means back to education. We need people to make these choices to help dictate the market and create those tipping points.
I'd like to chime in again. My phone was cutting out earlier, but I want to kind of circle back with talking to people who aren't open about it. So as you know, I work with reusable plastics. I'm working on creating a circular economy within the Lansing area with like reusable food containers. And then I've partnered with another company who will be able to recycle them at the end of life to really close the loop. My mom's side of the family is super conservative. And the way that I've got them to support me is to kind of market it as we have a trash problem. And I think what you can do when you said you want to produce the energy like as close as you can to where it's going to be used. If you like talk to them about keeping your supplies local, energy local, creating American jobs, I think they'll be all over that. Because, we saw it with COVID-19, like shipment delays and like not being able to get our resources. So if you can really talk to people about keeping everything local within the communities, I think you can really win.
100%. No, and that's so great to hear the work you're doing. And thank you for that. That's amazing. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that local aspect, and the job aspect. I mean, that's, solar installer has been the fastest growing career field for a couple of years now. And so that's huge. And then there's also that kind of, and like I said, I've kind of working with a group that leans libertarian, but it, property rights. You should have the ability to be sustainable and self-reliant is a better way to say it. I think self-reliance and not reliant on any large corporation from some other city. That's another avenue here is being able to be resilient and self-reliant, and not dependent on anybody else. I think that resonates with everybody.
Hey, Rob, can you talk a little about, well, you're, I believe, still selling Meyer Burger panels, right? And, I guess that they kind of market themselves as actually more environmentally preferable. Could you talk a little about that? Because, it's interesting nowadays. It's a good sign that we're getting more sophisticated, I guess, that not all solar panels, or actually any product, are all kind of equal in the sense of environmental issues. So
Sure. Yeah, no, and they are, it's not a household name, but it in reality it should be, because in just a little bit of background on them, that they're originally a German company, but everybody knows the names of Panasonic and LG and these premium modules. Well, the machines that they created those on were designed by Meyer Burger, so they are kind of like actually at the forefront of renewable energy technology. But they, and I don't know if call this a European thing, have a huge emphasis on the sustainability aspect of their production. So they do, you know, there are tiers of modules that are going to, you know, either utilize more sustainable products, stay away from PFAS, lead, other types of things. How they actually source the material, you know, is a huge part of it. It's all about trying to reduce that embedded carbon, you know, in the manufacturing process. And they do strive for that, you know, and they have, you know, there's like kind of like a brochure that we provide people just so you can kind of see what are some of the environmental benefits of this particular module choice. You know, and so the other aspect to that too is the back end of the cycle, which, you know, closing the loop, you know, like Kendra talked about. And that's something they're focusing on too, by, you know, providing recyclable pathways preemptively. So when people can make that choice, they already know, okay, this material has a path. It's not going to be waste no matter what. You know, and that, along with just the focus on low embedded carbon manufacturing practices, is the key, you know, and there are unfortunately not as many panel manufacturers as I'd like to see putting a focus on that, an emphasis on that. I believe that there's more of a focus and emphasis on that in other markets, for instance, Europe. Whereas here in the US, it's much more monetary based. You know, but I think it can work in tandem. Those can go together. But we just need there to be enough of a kickstart to get you know, enough of these recycling programs up on their feet, where then it can actually end up being, you know, another source of economic boom when you can then reuse this same material. It's a lot cheaper to reuse metal that is already out of the ground than to dig more metal out of the ground. You know, so there is an economic path for this all to make sense from a financial perspective, while also catering to that environmental concern. And they are doing that, and we're still searching for better and better options. There's, you know, the door is always open for better products. But yeah, I'm hopeful that they can become more of a household name. I know they're setting up manufacturing plants in the US. And that's another big thing that actually the IRA was great as far as incentivizing production and manufacturing, you know, here in the US. Because that's another huge issue is if panels are manufactured, you know, in Asia, now they need to be shipped in massive container ships that are extremely dirty just to get here. You know, so, and that's similar to the concept of produce the energy where it's needed. Well, we should also manufacture the material as close to where it's needed. You know, same thing, same concept. So, and also then closing that loop. You know, so I'm optimistic there'll be more and more of this to come. I hope.
If what would you recommend for someone who's looking to put solar on their home? Do you have any general Rob's top 3 tips? And
Sure.
do you want to put your contact info in the chat window too at some point?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Well, I mean, you know, other than you know, contacting us, right? Obviously, no, but there's so many we can't install on every roof in the state or the country. So you know, that obviously people what I would first suggest, do your due diligence, because there are good companies out there. We're not the only ones. But in order to make sure that this market is respected and can continue to grow, then we need to make sure as a consumer, we're choosing services from companies that are going to follow through, are going to you know, provide a good service, and then not kind of leave you hanging on the back end, unfortunately. So what I would recommend, you know, to people is, you know, first and foremost, you know, make sure you're really checking into the company that you're considering. Talk about service warranties, understanding that, and really specifically what, you know, are you going to be there to make sure the system's working, you know, this type of thing. Make sure you're also seeing, you know, I would highly recommend a site visit is conducted before a contract is signed, to try to make sure that, you know, all of a sudden there isn't going to be something completely different when it comes to install, because there's a lot of the, you know, sort of blasting out virtual. I've seen it all, you know, where this doesn't comply with setbacks. You obviously, this isn't not going to work. You know, so having a company actually come out and talk to you and make sure that they're designing something that works for your home is important. if a company is advertising and saying like, you'll never pay another bill, highly skeptical of that, because as we all know, just to simply be connected to the grid, there is a monthly connection fee, you know? And in the winter, obviously your credits from the summer should carry over. But there is just, you know, kind of a convoluted answer here, but there are a lot of predatory entities that are in this because it's kind of, hey, quick money, you know, so just be cautious, you know, do your due diligence, you know, make sure that you're seeing the price of your system prior to credits or grants being applied. You can see what it looks like after, but make sure you're seeing it on the front end, read the fine print, right? Look for service warranties on the back end, to make sure that they're going to take care of the system if it's not working. And then, you know, I also recommend asking about, you know, do you have environmentally forward products? For instance, you know, Meyer Burger is one, that you can recommend. And some will have that, you know, we're not the only company that installs Meyer Burger. You know, so I think that's kind of some of the big things to look out for. You know, and I would also highly recommend too, checking to make sure that are you actually a company that is based in this area? Do you subcontract? You know, because what we've been seeing is that there's a presentation of, yes, I'm your local person, but in reality, there's like 4 different companies involved, a big sales floor over here, and then the corporate entities in another state, but it's all presented as local. And then that's a red flag, because, you know, then their interest is not to serve the local public. It's how much and how quickly can we pull money out of this area before we move to the next area. You know, so do you subcontract? Do you pull permits? Right? I mean, it's shocking. Some don't, you know, ask those questions. And if any company is saying sign here and we'll install this month, walk away, because the permit process alone takes several weeks for your local entities to receive your permits, you know, provide the approvals and give you the green light to actually install what it is they're telling you they're going to install. So those are some of those kind of red flags to look out for. But if you check those boxes, like I said, there are a number of other companies out there, not only in this state, but in the country, that are going to do the right thing and follow through, you know, as long as you check those boxes and ask those questions.
Thank you.
I just want to say I had Adam come out. So Absolute Solar has come out to my house, and one of the nice things that I liked was the idea that you know, you can say this is how much it's going to cost or whatever, and finance it or whatever, do or don't. But one of the things that I liked that he shared with me was, you know, if at the moment you can't afford to do all the panels, or you can't afford to put the battery, or you can't afford to do all the different pieces, the system is set up so that you can add on when you're able to do that, which I really thought that was nice to know, because I was like, oh, I for sure want a battery. And then I was like, saw the price of the battery and I was like, oh, well, you know, so the idea of being able to set it up and then you can add on, and then you can add on the battery, however you decide to do it, whether you decide to do all of it at once or not. I thought that was a really nice piece of it. And I want to also share that you're the one I talked to at the Green Fair about the company that's coming around, and they're based out of Utah, and it is very much that we can get it put on in a month, and you will have no bill. And yeah, so
run away. They're the next up in a long line of these. There's been a number of them.
And I pushed back at them. I said, this is not what I'm hearing. And he goes, let me prove it. So he sends me somebody's bill, and it just, it's just feeling very sketch. So anyway,
PDF editor exists, right? No, that's great example. And no, well, it's nice to see you again. And I appreciate bringing that up, because that is, you know, and it's high pressure sales, you know, and it's funny, a little sidebar. A good example of this is, I don't know if anyone has seen or heard of the movie Wolf of Wall Street, but the Jordan Belfort, the kind of shady business person, after he had done his, you know, prison time, just, you know, what he's into today is teaching people how to high pressure sell solar. That's literally what he's doing right now, and how to kind of dupe people into signing these super high interest financing projects where then you just boom and you get them signed right here, right now. We'll hand you a check if you sign today, you know, that kind of stuff. It's nothing makes me more upset, honestly, than that. But you have to watch out for these things. It is a little bit of still this, you know, unregulated space, a little bit of the Wild West, you might say. So there are predatory entities for sure that are out there. But in the other side of that great point though on the fact that it's not an all or nothing, you know, scenario. People can expand systems, add a battery at a later time. That's absolutely, you know, an option to make sure people are staying within their comfortable budget. And I would also say one other thing, yeah, to watch out for is those, you know, hey, zero down, zero down. Well, read the fine print on those financing options, because I've heard horror stories of 20-25% interest that just bury people, you know. And so what I definitely always recommend, and this is the only financing that we really work with or you know suggest, is the Michigan Saves program. It's a fantastic program that is, you know, overseen by a group that, you know, has some boxes to check to become a contractor in that group. And it's all credit unions from Michigan giving actual real competitive rates that you can trust and rely on, you know. So that's the avenue I always recommend, is instead of one of these kind of real fast financing like Sunlight. There's a few of them that you have to be very careful for.
Well, and when they learned that I was the association president, they were like, oh, you can get your whole system paid for, because all the people that you get on, everyone that you get to do it, you'll get $1,500 back.
It's
So,
the
yeah.
gimmicky. Yeah. I mean, I've heard, you know, going into even, and this is just, it's so horrible, like a low income neighborhood where, you know, people might be, hey, making my next mortgage payment is tough. They, you know, knock on that door. First of all, didn't get a permit to solicit, but anyways, knock on that door and then say, if you sign here right now, I will hand you a $2,000 check and you don't owe anything for a year. For someone who is sort of paycheck to paycheck, you know, that is a very intriguing offer. And I don't blame people necessarily for saying, oh my gosh, that would be huge. That's so amazing. And then they're buried. They're buried in these massive interest loans. And there's no getting out. I mean, people have taken mortgages out on their house based on what they're being told, and then, you know, never following through. And it's sad, you know, and frustrating.
Those were the references that they gave me. So when I called the people, and then when I asked them, I said, did you seek any other quotes? Oh, no, this was so great. So they didn't even get any other quotes, all three of them.
Well, and honestly, I'm not saying this is the case, but I wouldn't even put it past a company like that to have a fake contact who is someone else in their companies. Oh, I did that and it was great. I mean, there is no, honestly, very little limit to the deceptive practices I've heard of and seen out there. It's, like I said, very frustrating. And I would love to see more oversight to make sure that this industry can be trusted and respected. So that's, it's a challenge. It gets me hot under the collar talking about that.
As we begin to wrap up, we have about 10 more minutes. Are there any other questions related or not, or issues that people want to throw on the table?
Yes, please.
Roberta?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your information, Rob. I'm really intrigued with all the ideas on how to, you know, what can you do at home? Because that's always I drive people crazy, because every decision I make, I'm thinking sustainable climate change. Could I do something different in this choice? So I'm always looking for ideas. So the compostable trash bag's a great idea. I'm curious. So I have a house solar installed by your company, and I'm really happy to have it. It's now been 2.5 years. It does not, as I expected, cover 100% of my energy usage. Can I come back with you to add more panels now that it's shown that even though it was rated at 106%, it's not covering even 100% of my usage?
Yeah, absolutely. Expansion is that's something that we do fairly regularly.
Okay.
You know, obviously, space dependent, you know, if there's space on a roof or not. But yeah, that's very common. And then just by kind of the same process, as far as showing consumption through a bill, then the utility has to approve that expansion. And actually, since 2.5 years ago, both consumers and DTE now have to accept up to 110%, as opposed to before it was just 100. So you
nice.
can expand a little bit, or if you're on, say, BWL, then you can go quite a bit over 100. And as long as it doesn't get obscene of like 300%, and they will approve and accept that. The only thing that I always caution everyone on this is just to be aware of the distributed generation rate, which is not good in our
What does
state.
that mean? What does that mean?
That's the
The what?
credit rate for excess generation. So when you produce, say in the
Oh.
summer, in the afternoon, you're producing more, say at 2 or 3 o'clock than you need in that moment. Well, then unless you have a battery to capture that excess, it's going to go back to the grid, where it's going to then be recorded as excess generation. And then you receive a bill credit. I mean, it's good to get a bill credit, but the distributed generation rate in our state is very poor, to say the least. So that is just the one thing I always want to make sure people are aware of, is that while the more we offset our production, that leads to longer and bigger long-term gains, but as far as the short-term gains, you're going to be exposed more to distributed generation and that lower credit rate. So it's just something to be aware of. And so if somebody's very interested, I need to make sure the system pays for itself as quickly as possible. If that's the case, then you really want to try to limit how much you send back to the grid if you can. But also a lot of people are more interested in, just like you might be here, is just offsetting as much of my footprint as I can. And that will lead to a bigger long-term gain. It's just something to be aware of.
If I could cover my entire roof in solar, I would. But they won't.
You might be able to now, depending on that increase of acceptable power that they have to take based. I think that bill was passed last year, John, I believe.
Okay.
But
great.
But yeah, no, that's the expansion is fairly common, and especially as people say add EVs to their homes, things like that, their consumption goes up. Other products are becoming electrified, so that's we do always love to have clients come back to us, and we can help expand and say add an EV charger or a battery to capture that excess generation. And I do expect battery prices to continue to slowly come down, and starting to meet where the panel prices are, which have gotten better in the last few years as well. So
great. Okay,
Is net metering a thing? Or is that good or is that
unfortunately,
bad?
that is gone, unless you are in the Traverse City, Petoskey. There's 3 municipal utilities that have joined together to create a pure net metered collective. And what do you know? Their grid hasn't utterly collapsed like consumers in DT would tell you it would. But that's just not true. So those are net metered, but unfortunately, otherwise, no. And that is probably my biggest complaint with state policy, is the undervaluing of excess generation, because we shouldn't be in the bottom 5% of the country for that value. That's absurd.
So if another company is promising net metering, that's not a thing here,
unless you're in that tri-county municipal area up in Traverse City. If you're consumers, if you're DTE, if you're BWL, no, it's not net metering. It hasn't been for a little while now.
Very good to know. Thank you.
This has been a great conversation. We still have time for a couple more, but I wanted to point out, if you didn't see the chat window, Sam is doing a talk next week. Is that virtual and live, or you're muted?
I think it's only live. It's going to be at the chapel at the historic village in Meridian Township.
Chance to meet Sam Lovell in person. This is a rare opportunity.
It's rare.
With local roots.
I wanted to, if I could, just let Rob know this little book, very thin, does begin to talk about the science of climate change, but it's buried in a bunch of stories about kids in the 1960s engaging with the environment. So it really focuses on both sides of the carbon budget. It talks about carbon emissions being, in the need to reduce carbon emissions, but at the same time, it looks at all of the carbon sinks that have been lost over the last couple hundred years due to progress and the need to restore woodlands and wetlands to get back the other side of the carbon budget, not just reducing our emissions, but also being able to grab onto them.
All that.
Green infrastructure.
That is so cool, Sam. Yeah,
Well,
thank you for sharing that.
check
That's
it
awesome.
out. We'll see. I mean, it's been out since the spring with the publisher celebration of Earth Week. I don't really know how many have sold. I haven't gotten a report on that, but who knows? It's just out there.
Where can you purchase the book?
It's on Amazon. It's on the publisher's website. That's eli.org.
That's where I would go. I do not have an Amazon account, and I never will until there's no other option, I guess.
Right. My wife is the same way.
Awesome. Yeah.
But,
eli.org.
Yeah, that's Environmental Laws Institute is the publisher. eli.org.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's right on the front page of their website, their first page, on the right-hand side under ELI Press or something like that. But
awesome.
yeah.
Well, I would love to check that out.
Hey, you know, I would be interested too in if you can, do you have a presentation with kids, for kids? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see that. I've got to do some of that too here up in Tawas with the schools. And if I could steal anything from what you've got, I'd be glad.
Yeah, I would want to connect you probably with Fred, because he has a whole lesson plan already that he uses, and he's the teacher liaison for their sustainability club. So I mean, he has whole stuff already that he uses in his classrooms.
Okay,
I'd be happy to connect you with him.
If you put your
I put our website and our company email in there. So if you just want to shoot that in email, and just say met Rob and the Green Dialogue, and would love to connect with Fred, and we'll get you guys connected, because I think you would have a great conversation.
I'll send it later today because I got to run out of here real quick. I got to get a haircut for this event next week. So
okay. All right. Well, thank you. No, that's great. I look forward to connecting you guys.
If any of you have suggestions for speakers for future dialogue, let me know. Or if any of you would like to speak, Sam, I don't know if you're available next week or not, but please let me know. Any other parting comments that anyone has, other than thank you so much, Rob?
Thank you, Rob. I'm curious about the deer call. Do you have any suggestions on how to get the deer call to be more in some neighborhoods? I have 2 neighbors, their dog has been attacked 4 times now. And then I have a deer that went through with somebody's back window or back door, and they contacted the township, and the township said they're doing good enough with the deer call. So I just was wondering if anybody knows how to get it like in different areas. We really would like to have it in the property that the Land Pres bought on Cornell Road. We think that would be a good place to do it to help lower.
I believe Emma Campbell is the one that oversees the deer call program.
Okay.
It could be a good conversation next week too. Love any ideas you have about topics that you're excited about or passionate about or interested in. And Peter?
Yes, Rob, I was fascinated by earlier, right before the Meyer trash bag suggestion, you said there's plenty of low-hanging fruit. It'd be great if you felt like doing a presentation for us directly from the low-hanging fruit department, since those would all be more accessible ideas than starting our own company and
sure. Okay. Yeah. No, that that's something that I think we can put together, and I'd be definitely interested. I know it doesn't look like Kendra's here anymore, but I think she'd probably be a good resource too for some of that. But yeah, that's kind of my idea, is to, if we could collectively, and I don't necessarily have all of the specifics personally. There are tons of choices, but if we can create some sort of a database or like a document
even
that can categorically give you those choices. I think that would do a lot for folks and make it easy for them,
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
I completely agree with that, Peter.
Hey, that's a good segue as we think about next steps and sharing that information, how we might share that and in a future conversation. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Peter?
I think that's what I meant.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks for
thank you
having me,
very much.
everybody. Nice meeting you all.
thanks for being a leader in the industry and
Wow.
sharing so much of your time with us.
You as well, Leroy. Thank you.
Truly.
Bye-bye.
Take care.